If we think about what was our goal, what do we have in mind? How do we want to structure things? What was the intent of what we just played?
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, our original intent is what is this thing called love?
Mm-hmm.
It's a question, kind of. So, with that pedaling G, the vamp, the beginning and at the end, we kind of wanted it to be sort of confusing.
Perfect.
That was sort of, we established that, and wanted to work around that. But that was our original plan.
I love it. It's great. Great. So with that in mind, a few things to say. You know, I love the way the vamp started out, especially with your funky bass line. I would have loved to hear, especially since if that was the premise of everything being this question and confusing, then I think that the question should remain for each statement of the solo. Everybody should have had an opportunity to establish their own question. But, you know, oftentimes when we hear music, you know, I hear people that if you play a tune, it's in 2. You know, oftentimes people jump right out of the 2 and want to get right into the 4. So I would have loved to hear you actually just take a solo over the question and make it mysterious and make us wonder, make us like, what are they doing? When is it going to go? Make us as curious, and we have questions, and then give us the answer. You see what I mean?
Right.
So if that's the premise, stick with that premise through the solos as well, so everybody can have a chance to define what their question really is. You know, not everyone, because we don't want it to be monotonous. But maybe if we did it again, I would love to hear how everyone can let the tune evolve more. It was a little bit too predictable. I was kind of hoping in the back, like, man, stay in that funky groove. Just stay there and milk it and play around it and interact and things like that. So that's just something as far as structure and intent to think about. Just from musical aspects, as far as sonic aspects about what I heard, when you came in, I love that, your sound's big enough that you can fill the room without an amp. So I could actually hear the wood, which I love, you know, so it's great. So, Will, when he's setting this great vamp up, you know, in addition to you kind of feeling his groove and kind of breathing with him, you know, your sound and your intensity has to match what he puts out. So he came in about bang, 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 like powerful. But you came in when the cymbal was really kind of timid. And I was like hoping for you to match that intensity. Because when you came in, Damon, right? Mm-hmm. When Damon came in and matched his intensity. So it was 2 intense instruments and I was struggling to hear the groove of it all, you know? So I know sometimes drummers are like, well, I don't want to overplay. He doesn't have an amp. But with someone with a big sound like this, if you sing inside your head and you're singing that bass line, you'll play up to him a little bit more. And then I was listening to you. If you describe your strategy in playing these cymbals, who do you play behind what? What's your how do you orchestrate?
I guess for like a more open sound, like I go to like my right side.
And this is, how do you describe this one? If you do you have a name for it? Cymbals?
I don't like a name.
Yeah.
No, I guess I don't have a name for it.
Okay, so just think about how you describe it. Maybe that could become the name.
Okay, I guess it's kind of like it's just like a really like distinct sound, and it's kind of like I feel like it lays like this kind of like bed, okay, like a bed of sound and stuff and overtones and stuff, and it's just kind of like it's like warm. Warmer.
Yeah. Okay, so this is your maybe your warm, gentle cymbal.
Yeah.
And how would you describe this one?
This is like raw, like hard.
Hard,
kinda,
raw.
Yeah.
Would you say this one projects more?
Probably not.
This one projects more?
Yeah, I would say this one projects more.
Okay, so this is the, even though it's hard and it may not project, it's a little bit drier. This one has a little bit more ring to it.
Yeah.
So with this one, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. With this one, if you would play this one, maybe behind an instrument that would need more help sonically because it's drier. And you play this behind an instrument that has a bigger sound to it because it has more support. So with that being said, you know, for a guitar solo, you know, try this, especially for piano, you know, because you gave piano a softer instrument, your warm, washy cymbal. So it's hard distinguishing here. So find ways. I used to, when I first moved to New York, I'd bring cymbals to my gigs. And I had a set of cymbals. I went to Istanbul, and there's this great drummer, Idris Muhammad, who helped me pick out cymbals because I'm a cymbal freak. I love the sound of cymbals, you know? Like Jimmy Cobb lets me play a cymbal, and I watch him play it, and then I try to hit the cymbal like Mr. Cobb, which I never can because I don't have that pop in my wrist that he does. But I love the sound of cymbals. And I think a great cymbal can support different instruments. And even Faddis was telling me that Dizzy carried a certain China cymbal around because he loved his China cymbal sometimes when he played harmony music. I don't know why. I think China cymbals sound great for sax solos, but I never heard it for harmony music, which is cool. So think about ways to orchestrate. If I were going to play with you, this would be the cymbal I would gravitate to because this one would make me feel too alone, too naked, you know? And I don't want to feel that way. I want to feel like this sonic bath around me, so to speak. Yeah. So think about, and if you were listening when you were playing, think about what colors you like behind you so that you can describe that to drummers when you hire them. You know, hey man, you know that cymbal you got from wherever? I love that cymbal. You know, I say that all the time. You know that cymbal I say, Matt Wilson, I play with Matt Wilson a lot. And I'll tell him, man, he'll say, what did you think of the cymbal? I said, it's awful. You know, I'm honest with him. If I hear something, if he asks me if it's a new cymbal that he's starting to endorse, I'll say it's awful for me. You know, it works great for maybe this or this, but I don't particularly like it behind me. So the cymbals that he uses when we play in arts and crafts are cymbals that I love, which is really cool. But in me playing to those cymbals, I like to blend my sound into the cymbal too. So there's give and take. He plays a good cymbal, I blend into it. And I think when we start thinking about making music, we want to blend in to your sound. You want to blend in your name?
Sam.
Sam. You want to blend? Oh, Sam Johnson. So you want to blend in Sam's sound. Sam, you want to blend in to Will's sound and Emmett and Jason. Okay. So everyone, we're all trying to blend into sounds together. And the reason why we want to do that is because I'll never remember this, and I'll never forget this quote that Ray Brown said once. We were in Portugal and we were just talking. And he said, you know, Stafford, there's two types of musicians. There's a selfish musician, there's a selfless musician. And he goes, your goal should be the selfless musician. And that's the one who's always giving, always giving. So in the act of always giving, one thing I try to never do is listen to myself. Because once I do, my ship is about to sink. Because I'm not going to connect to you or you or you or you. So think about ways for you to connect, for you to find ways to use the cymbals and find that way. And then think about ways, Emmett, right?
Yeah.
For you and Emmett to try to connect more with your comping. You know, there were certain things Emmett was doing to build up, and you guys were kind of fighting each other. So Emmett, pay closer attention if you can his snare, because that should be kind of dictating not everything that you play, but the snare for me is like the waist of a basketball player. You know, anybody play basketball? Yeah. So if we play, you know, we know to look at the waist, right? Because the hands always can trick you. The legs can always trick you, but the waist can never trick you. So I can listen to a drummer's snare and know exactly where all the hits, all the setups are going to be, where you're going to drop all your bombs. The whole history of the drums, to me, as far as setups, come from the snare. And we have to study that. You know, I can name all these drummers that I listen to and learn all their setups. So when I play with them, I know what they're going to do. You know, it's like when I met McCoy Tyner for the very first time. When I told him I wanted to play with him, I felt like such an idiot for saying that. But then I went out and listened to some of his music and learned some of his songs. And you know, when I saw him again, I said, Mr. Tyner, I know I told you I wanted to play with you, but I learned a whole bunch of your songs. So if you ever need me, just let me know. And he called me for a tour. So you know, if I meet Jimmy Cobb is one of my favorite drummers. I told him the same thing. And I did learn his cymbal beat. I said, I love your cymbal beat. I can describe what you do on this record. I can play it a little bit, but not great. So, you know, for horn players, rhythm section players, to have an affinity and love for the other rhythm section players is important. And for us to learn their vocabulary is really important. So when it came to your solo, it was a great solo, but I was trying to figure out who you were connecting with. I saw you looking here, but I wanted you to look there and there too.
Okay.
And they're, you know, yesterday when we were playing, I was saying to Will not to listen to me because I wanted him to stay in a certain place so I could create a pocket. I think it's really important for horn players to find ways to connect with rhythm sections. And I'm going to use a word here that I really don't mean, but in control where you need them to go. And control, I don't want to say control in an egotistical way. I want to say it in a musical way. But I want to be able to control where my solo goes. I want to be able to control what I need from them and what I don't need from them. And the only way that we can control that is to learn them really well. All right? So there's certain things that you could have been doing to bring out Will a little bit more.
Right.
There's certain things you could have been doing to bring out Sam a little bit more. You know? Or Damon, whoever you wanted to focus on. But when you solo this time, if we do it again, think about that. Think about yourself less.
Okay.
And maybe I love for you, instead of playing like this,
Sure.
because, you know, that's sending a really rough signal to Will in a way.
Yeah.
So I'd rather send a rough signal to everybody. Just
Right.
say, you know what, just look at my back the whole time, you
Sure.
know, instead of just Will. Just
Okay.
kidding, Will. No, but if you're standing here, you saturate yourself in sound.
Right.
And that's the ideal thing. And then when you saturate yourself, leave your sound alone.
Okay.
Go to someone else. You know, there's this great bass player. His name was Dennis Irwin. One of my best friends in the world, and had the fortune to play with him in the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra for a while until he passed. also with Matt Wilson. And he told me once, he goes, man, he goes, check this out. Tonight when we get on the bandstand, he goes, I want you to see how many he talk really fast. Yeah, baby, yeah, cool, yeah. And so he goes, I want to see how many duets you can play tonight. I said, duets? What are you talking about? He goes, I want you to stand right here, and I want you to play for a chorus, or maybe for your solo, let it be a duet with Matt. And then maybe for another chorus or another tune, let it be a duet with me. And let me actually hear and feel that. And then maybe play a duet with Gary. You know, and let your mind go to playing duets with people and having connectivity to the people on the bandstand all the time. He goes, don't make anything about what you do. And that was his lesson to me. And, you know, he'd always play examples of it. He goes, listen to this. Yeah, it's not really connecting, you know. And he played actually recordings of me, not of me, but for me. And so let that be our goal as a horn player. When you take the role as a horn player and you take a solo, do the same thing. Play a duet with someone. Just don't play your solo. All right?
Yeah.
So this do we have time to do it again, or you got other groups that want to play?
Yeah. Why don't we do a relatively short version?
Okay. So, do you know what I mean by creating a pocket? How to create a pocket? Yes?
With my playing?
With the rhythm section.
Okay. Just groove together and...
Groove together, but being able to manipulate time.
Okay.
See, I think, and you know, I hate to drop names, but I hate for you to think that everything just came from me, like I'm making all this up right now, because I'm not nearly that smart. But, you know, I was really fascinated in the conversation I had with Freddie Hubbard, because I would listen to records and I say, so Freddie, what was the battle going on with you and Art Blakey? And he goes, it was ego. It was power. You know, Art Blakey was always trying to control me. And he goes, when I first joined the band, he can control me. But I had it with it, you know. I had it with the control. So you hear certain records, and you hear them fighting for time. That's what I call it, fighting for time. And like on Free For All, the band falls apart, you know. Why they fall apart? Because everybody was fighting for time. But it's really interesting on records you hear with Freddie in different groups, like with Dexter or something like that, you hear him manipulating the time, pulling the time back, making the beat fatter, because that's what Dexter would do. But then you hear him like with records with Art Blakey at that time when it was almost time for him to leave the band, that he was like so on top that he had total control of the rhythm section. And it was fascinating. It's fascinating to hear a soloist's amount of control they can have when they play. So I'm not saying for you to do this, but when you're soloing with them, listen around you and see how your time can affect what you do.
Okay.
And your feel can affect what you do. Let's do a short version if we could. When you're soloing, there's certain ways and there's certain things that you can do to cue them.
Yeah.
Like you guys kind of, I think you wanted them to go to 4 a little sooner.
Yeah.
And then you guys kind of went to 4 in between. But you know, there's language and there's time things that you can do. So you know, you have to be careful not to confuse, which you didn't really do, but you kind of gave them the hint. But knowing like it didn't come off the way you had planned it, you know, thinking about how could I have defined it a little bit more.
Okay.
So, you know, I'll play something real quick. So like if it's open, don't really play any kind of swing yet. You know, don't play swing kind of figures until you're kind of ready to go there. So you guys can play the map. 1, 2, vamp sounds great and feels great, but then when we go to the swing, it has no buoyancy. So, you know, when I first met Dizzy Gillespie, that's the first thing he said to me. He says, your playing has no buoyancy whatsoever. He goes, unless your playing has buoyancy, you'll never work. And that's as far as the trumpet goes. But then as far as, I think it applies to everyone. And buoyancy is you know, I think when we play, jazz can be a downbeat-oriented music. If it's like, if it's something like that. But if we're going, that's more of an upbeat-oriented music. So I have to feel the upbeat when you guys go to the swing. The vamp felt great because that's like boom, boom, boom. It's downbeat-oriented. But then all of a sudden we go to the swing. I need to hear ba-ding, ding, ding, all upbeats, thinking upbeats. I need to hear the upbeats in your ride cymbal. You know, so ka-dang, dang, dang. Instead of thinking dang, 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 you're going to think a-dang, ga-dang, dang, 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 dang. And that's how I think your whole premise of the ride cymbal came about, you know? Just that dang, 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 dang. So we have to give it more motion. So when we go to the swing, it still has motion. Now, if we were going to play together, I would have to play super on top of you to give it motion, which I don't want to do. I hate playing on top. I hate, but if the music doesn't have enough motion, I'll play on top. Because another great teacher I had in college was just like, you know, music with motion creates emotion. And that's always followed me. Whether it's classical, jazz, it doesn't really matter. If music has motion, it'll always create emotion. So let me just hear the swing groove, and then we'll have another group come up. 1, 2, well, when you're in your practice room and you're just shedding, make sure that when you play like little pops and things on the drums, it doesn't affect the time of your ride cymbal, because your ride cymbal jumps forward when you do anything. So just make sure that your shedding is dang, dang, dang. And if you think, if you sing your ride cymbal pattern, sing it for me. Okay, so now see if you can fatten it a little bit. Okay, so that's fatter. Sing one rhythm though, just repetitive. You know, 1, 2, on top as you hear him, pull against him a little bit.
Okay.
1, 2, something that was super consistent on here, and the whole vibe was about this. Nothing else got in the way of your vibe. That's what you need to do all the time, because that's home. This is what's going to put money in your pockets. Those won't. But if this feels good, people will be like, I'm paying Will because he makes it feel good. And when you defined your beat just then and just lean back a little bit, it fattened the pocket. Now there's freedom that just came about. So yesterday when I just want to show him something for you guys. Yesterday I was saying, don't listen to me, because I'm going to pull against you. I'm warming the sound up. That's how I was kind of taught to warm the sound. If I don't pull against you and I play on top of you, then I'm trying to get a whole different energy. So I'll play 2 A sections. One will be pulling, the other won't be. See if you hear it. 1, 2, Could you hear the difference?
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So what do we like? Both are cool. It depends what we want in the midst of our solo. So how do you build tension? How do you shape a solo? That was going to be my next thing. I know I'm talking a lot of this group. But the most important part of any solo is the greeting, and the other most important part is the salutation. So we got to get our greeting and salutation together. And then I also look at music as being, with the greeting and salutation, playing in a combo and playing music at the highest level is a big relay race. You got to leave us something with your salutation that you can pick up on. You got to leave us something that you can pick up on. And you got to leave us something that everyone can pick up on. If I listen to someone and someone finishes a solo and people are like, I think it's done, that means that there wasn't a definitive saying, okay, if I'm telling a story and I'm going to say the end, you know that I'm done. And so we have to find a way to say the end, and the end can kind of match hello if we wanted to, or it doesn't have to. But we can find ways to do it that way, and also find ways to contour our solo. So for me, for example, if I want to build a solo, I may play fat and warm at the beginning so you and I can develop trusts. That's what music's about. So I played with you for the first time yesterday. My goal wasn't to come in and say, man, I'm going to play a pile of stuff. My goal was to say, let me establish trust. Let me establish trust. Let me establish trust. How can I establish trust? Well, let me listen to what you're doing, and let me come to what you're doing. So in the midst of me establishing trust, I need the same from you. I need you to say, okay, let me see what he's doing. So in the midst of all that, you were listening to me, and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, he's pulling behind. Let me slow down a little bit for him. Feel what I'm pulling against. And then I'll flip it around later. Because when I want to create energy, I'm not going to do that anymore. I may. Who knows? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's enough. I talked enough. Let's
Thank
have
you.
another.